I sit down with different people and I always watch their reaction on how they feel about China. And I'm curious to know what you're going to say. When I talk to Ray Dalio about China, he has a different angle. When I talk to President Bush about China, different angle. I talk to General Spalding about China, different angle. Some of them are, we don't trust them at all. Some are very careful on what they say about China. And it's almost like they're uncomfortable because they have business dealings. How do you feel about China and how do you view China yourself?
Well, I mean, I don't have business dealings with China myself, so I'll just throw that out there. But I've studied for the last, since the financial crisis in particular. I mean, aside from, I mentioned I've been in China back and forth for decades, but as I have lots of places in the world. But what I specifically look at is the kind of public communication that happens between the U.S. and China. And from my angle of expertise, the sort of central bank, the sort of monetary policy, sort of initiatives relative to currency that happen between the two countries. And so with respect to China, there was a lot of, and there still is talk of whether they manipulate their currency or what have you to have better sort of trade positions and trade advantages. And I think any country really that would, to an extent, move their currency up and down to help their own position. And I think we've done that from the standpoint of our 0% monetary policy and the increase of the Fed's balance sheet. China's done it from the standpoint of moving their rates around and what they consider non-QE, which is moving money into their economy or lending money to regional alliances so that they become dependent on China. And so I look at more of a standpoint of how money is flowing around, and I don't really, and you can see from that perspective that there are points where China moved its money externally in order to build that strength, build those alliances, and then where they've kind of been questioned about overplaying that step, overreaching their alliances because of their military might. So from the standpoint of monetary policy, I think that they have tried to come into the world, but at the same, in terms of the IMF, in terms of trade, but at the same time, I think in terms of their military might or their sort of suppression of what Hong Kong wants to do and sort of their what they've done in the region, I think that's a negative. I think it's a negative for the region. I think it's a negative actually for China and for the world.
It's a negative for China and the world.
Because if you're just in terms of, and it's not that, it's that if you have the ability as a country to forge alliances or to leverage weaknesses with other countries, and let me talk monetarily, not militarily for a second. It's one thing to do that, to take advantage of that and to grow and do that. And China has done that over the last 12 years significantly. It's another thing to then overstep your sort of military might. The U.S. does this also. This is what countries do. They become powerful, and there's this like moment. There's multiple moments, but along the way there are moments where there's a choice to be made, whether sort of maintaining an economic, diplomatic alliance is the number one priority, or whether they're sort of overstepping from a more sort of bullying or sort of militaristic pivot. And those things could be back and forth. And I think with respect to China, they've had this run, and now they're in this position where they're overstepping the growth in their power effectively. And I think that's going to hurt China. And I think with respect to the US, that then potentially becomes an opportunity to the US, because I think there are lessons to be learned from using monetary policy, lending, investment to push your alliances as opposed to just, let's say, investing in markets. So I think both of these superpowers did things in different ways and do things in different ways, but there are lessons on both sides.